Hi, hello, welcome back to another video, welcome back to another week. I hope you're all doing well. I do apologize that I missed a little week there, but I believe that we are back in business. We are locking in for the rest of 2025. And look, I'm gonna hold your hand really gently while I say this, but as you're watching this, it's the end of September. Yeah. It's the end of September. There are less than 100 days till Christmas, which I think there's also less than 100 days till 2026, which is just a horrifying sentence to say out loud, and I hate it. I hate it. Also, before we get started, don't forget, I keep forgetting to do this at the beginning. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, share, do all the things. I really want to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, which I think is very doable at this point. We're at the time I'm filming this, it's at like 950 something. So I think it's really doable. That has been my goal for the year. So I would love to get there. So like, subscribe, share, tell your auntie to watch, tell your mum to watch, tell your dad to watch. You know, we don't discriminate here in this household. Anyway, getting back to the point. So there are 3 months left of the year. Yep. And let's be so for real, December's basically a write-off. So there's 2 months left of the year because it reaches December 1st and my brain goes, and then it's just like a steep slide. Also, I rearranged my plants on my top and I'm in the plants and I kind of like it, but I hope this isn't too distracting for you, me constantly hitting that. Anyway, I digress. I'm gonna move over a little bit. So we have 2 months, 2 productive months, 1 unproductive month of the year left. Yeah, that's a horrifying thought. And if you are like me, you like to challenge yourself, you like to track your reading. I, at the beginning of the year, set myself a goal of 100 books for this year, which at the beginning of the year, with me going into 2025 bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, seemed like a pretty achievable goal. I'm a relatively fast reader. A lot of the books I read aren't like the thickest books. So roughly 2 books a year, 2 books a year, 2 books a week seemed doable at the time. 2025 did not go the way I planned, as you all may or may not know. So needless to say, I don't even think I've hit the halfway point on my goal yet. So we've got a ways to go. Do I think I'm gonna achieve it? No. Do I think you watching, the viewer, may be a little closer to your reading goal than I am? And do I think you can do it? Yeah, absolutely, because I believe in you, bestie. I believe in you. We're like Tinkerbell here, okay? I believe that you can reach your reading goal. So I thought in the lead up, or shall we say the slow skid into 2026, I thought I would make a video about shorter books that you can read in order to bump that list up a little bit, you know? So let's get into it. So I've tried to include a mix of different books, and also I'm trying a new thing. A lot of the time when I do videos, I kind of just like fly by the seat of my pants and make it up as I go along. I have tried to do a little script for this video, okay? We're organizing, we're getting things good. So if I'm like looking down a lot, it's because I'm reading off the notes I've written myself. So I'm gonna try and not do that, but you know, we'll see how we go. So the first book we're going to talk about is Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. So at its like core, Breakfast at Tiffany's is about our main character, Holly Golightly. It's very similar to the movie. I'm going to say the movie is quite a good adaptation of this book. So Holly Golightly is like this young, glamorous woman drifting through 1940s New York. She throws parties. She's very charming. She kind of charms every single person that she comes across. And she lives in this very like glittery, chaotic way. But there's always this sense that she's kind of keeping people pushed away. She's keeping people at arm's length for a reason and doesn't really ever get into a proper or serious relationship in any way, shape, or form. We see her and watch her through the eyes of her neighbor, a writer who is both equal parts fascinated and confused by her. On the surface, it's very witty and stylish and quick-witted, dry, but I do think at its core it's about loneliness and the way that people try and reinvent themselves and start over. If you're wanting something short, but you also want to be able to like be pretentious and be like, oh, I read a classic, then Breakfast at Tiffany's is the book for you. What I think about Truman Capote especially is I think in this book, but also in some of his other writings, he really nails the feeling of being in New York City. Obviously, I was not alive in the 1940s, but I have been to New York a couple of times. I love it. It's one of my favorite places on earth. It's the only place I've ever seen in like movies and TV shows where I've gone and I'm like, oh, this is actually, it's actually like that. I've got my New York City tattoo that I got when I went for the first time. So the way he writes about the city feels very true. The character of Holly really sums up the saying that in Manhattan, some person can be having the best day of their life, and at the same time, some person can be having the worst day of their life. But I also think it's really, this book has stood the test of time. Like there's a reason that we keep talking about this one and reading this one and studying it, partly because the character of Holly herself does feel quite modern. Even though she's a 1940s woman, she's very free. She doesn't want to be pinned down. She really doesn't like to adhere to the standards that were placed on women at that time. And I do think that character does actually like fits quite well into a contemporary setting. She's messy, she's contradictory, but she's also incredibly lovable and I think really relatable, especially for a lot of women in their like early 20s, late 20s. She's very frustrating, and I think that frustration and manic pixie dream girl energy is very understandable and relatable. So if you're looking for a classic that you want to be a little bit pretentious and say you read a classic, I would highly recommend Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. So the next book I want to talk about, I have talked about this one a lot. It's Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Listen, there's a reason I talk about this book a lot, okay? So this one is incredibly eerie. It follows a couple, Leah and Miri. One of them has just returned. They're a marine biologist and they've just returned from a deep sea expedition that kind of went wrong and they were trapped under the ocean for, I think in the book it's like 6 months. It's a hot minute. And the other is trying to deal with the changes in their spouse when she's come back from this job. It's like part love story, part body horror, part meditation on grief and the wildness and ever-changing nature of the ocean. It's quiet and unsettling, and it really sits in that like beautiful kind of liminal space between loss and love. I've spoken about this book a lot, as I said, but only because I'm so passionate about convincing people to read it. When I first had this book pitched to me and when I first read it, it was pitched to me, I was really in my horror bag, and it was pitched to me as like a eldritch terror under the water horror. And so I went into it thinking that was what I was going to get, and I was so sorely disappointed that I DNF'd it. And it wasn't until this year that I picked it up again and went, no, I'm gonna finish this book. So many people have good things to say about it. I'm gonna at least finish it. And I went into it with a completely different mindset. I started it from the beginning, and it's just not a horror. There are definitely elements of that eldritch terror under the water thing, but it is not horror. At its core, it is a book about love and grief and the horrific strangeness of loss. The book does such an incredible job of capturing that horrific feeling of watching someone you love slip through your fingers in front of your eyes and being absolutely powerless to do anything to help them. I think anyone who's ever lost someone in a way that is slow, like, you know, losing a family member to cancer, whether that's platonic relationship, romantic, familial, I think they will recognize the horrific ordeal that is in these two characters. And what I think makes the end of this book so truly heartbreaking is having to find the strength within you to give that person who is slipping away the space and permission to go when it is their time. So I do think this book is an absolutely tragic love story at its core, and I think anyone who is pitching it as a horror book needs to have their lips sewn shut, because you're doing this, that's very aggressive, but you're doing the book a disservice. Stop calling it horror. It has horror elements. It's not a horror book. Don't go into it thinking it's a horror book. You'll be sorely disappointed. So that is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. The next book I want to talk about is Luster by Leilani. I haven't talked about this one as much on this channel. I think I've mentioned it once or twice, but it is an excellent novel. It's about our main character, Edie, who is a 20-something woman living in New York. She's an artist, or she's trying to be an artist, and she's stumbling through different jobs and relationships and making bad decision after bad decision. She gets involved with an older married man, and then through that she gets entangled in his entire family and really wrapped up in the life of his wife and his adopted child. It's really messy and it's biting and it's sharp and it's strange. It has a lot of observations about sex and race and class, all those things we like to talk about, and just generally being adrift in your 20s and in your life, and looking around the ocean of your life and being like, I have no oar, I have no motor, I have no rudder, I have no anchor. I'm just out here floating and I can't do anything about it. Edie's voice, who is the main protagonist of the book, is very chaotic, and you're privy to a lot of the internal what the fuck in here. And she's also painfully relatable in how much she self-sabotages, and you're like, babe, what are you doing? What are you doing? What, don't do that. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. I love messy women, and I love books about messy women. As a what I would say is a fellow messy woman, I love to see myself portrayed in media. I love reading about women who kind of fuck up their lives in funny and chaotic ways. And Edie just makes the most bizarre choices, and I love her for it. What I think makes this book stand out amongst all this chaos that's happening in the background plot-wise, there are really, as I mentioned, profound observations about particularly race, but fetishize that this word. Why can't I say this word? Fetishization. This word about race, and this word, and about modern romance and monogamy and whether it works or not. I think that's a pretty big topic that is very hot in today's media. You know, what is modern romance? What is a modern relationship? What is modern monogamy? While Edie is obviously a female character, it's written by a woman, I do think regardless of your gender, you could read this and see either your current self or your past self in the character of Edie. And, you know, we've all at some point in our life stared a very, not even questionable decision, but a bad decision. We've stared at right as little beady eyes and gone, you know what? Fuck it, we ball. And Edie does that so much in this book, and I love her so much for it. And again, it's a short one. You will get so much joy from reading this, and I just cannot recommend this enough. Fetishization. I did it. Fetish, damn it. Okay, the next book we're going to talk about, and I'm so sorry if I pronounce the author's name incorrectly, Several People Are Typing by Kasulke. This is a surreal office dark black comedy, and it takes place entirely within the realm of Slack. So our main character one day finds himself, or his subconscious, he's working from home, he finds his subconscious literally sucked into Slack, and he becomes Slackbot. He's stuck there, he can't work out how to get out. His body is still alive, but he is stuck in the computer. From there, it kind of spirals into this absurdist but surprisingly thoughtful story about corporate culture and I think capitalism in general. We love books that talk about capitalism, you know, digital life, and how much of our interactions as human beings have changed since COVID, I guess. It's always been a little bit online, but so much of the way we have changed how we communicate and how our day-to-day functions has changed in such a dramatic way since COVID, and, you know, Teams and Slack and all those things became a really relevant everyday part of our lives. Now, I can't say that I enjoyed this book, but I also can't say I didn't enjoy it. I think because the format is so untraditional, it is not written like a traditional novel. There are little bits of POV action, but 99.9% of the plot takes place through Slack messages. So you're reading an instant chat transcript almost. And format-wise, it's very strange. It's sort of hard to wrap your head around if you're used to traditional formatting in a normal novel. But I do think that's kind of the point. Obviously, it's part of the point. If you've ever been someone who's worked in a corporate office, this will be like cathartically funny for you. You will 100% recognize people that you've worked with and these kind of stereotypical characters that every office has. You'll recognize them within the stereotypical characters within this book. I do think it strikes a nice balance between being, as I said, there's elements of absurdity, not just from the actual plot of the character being sucked into slap, but there's like subplots that are also very, very strange. And I do think it is absurd enough that it's like intriguing, but doesn't tip you into that full on like, what the fuck did I just read? Because I know that not everyone likes that. It's one of those books where even if you don't love it, you'll remember it. I remember this book. I'm still talking about it. I read it. It was last year and I'm still talking about it. So the next book we're going to talk about is We Had to Remove This Post by Hanna Bervoets. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So this one follows our main character who works as a content moderator for a social media company that is very thinly veiled to be Facebook. The author doesn't do a good job of pretending she's not talking about Facebook. I do think this is slightly based off true events because I know that there's been a lot of scandal and controversy in the past with content moderators coming out talking about the horrific work conditions, not in just the fact that they have to look at literally the worst things human post, but just the lack of mental health support. So we basically her job is to spend hours and hours and hours, 8 hours a day, looking through content that has been flagged on this fictitious social media account and looking at like the worst things humans have ever posted and deciding whether or not they're worth taking down based on a very strict guidelines of things. It's very short. It's probably the shortest one on this list, and it really digs into how dehumanizing and damaging this kind of work can be. But also I think it doesn't just like point at the individual and how damaging this can be. I do think it does a really good job of like zooming out to talk about how social media in general has just destroyed our empathy and wormed its way into our lives, and how so much of our attention span and empathy has been commodified by these companies. We've grown so desensitized that the bar for what shocks us just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. And then it's like that prophecy of the self-eating snake where, you know, the people who are keeping these platforms clean are the ones who are being dehumanized, and how eventually that spreads out into the wider population. And then, you know, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. I can't go into too much more detail about the actual plot because there is kind of a plot twist at the end. So essentially, the main character is telling the story of what happened at the content moderation company through kind of like first person letters that she's writing to a lawyer who has approached her about a class action lawsuit that the former employees are lodging against the company. So there is a bit of a plot twist that I can't, you know, really talk too much about. But this book is excellent. It does a really good job of highlighting the self-devouring nature of the internet, how it feeds us horror, we get numb, and in turn the horror escalates. It's the Aurora Boreas, as I said. Apparently that's a real thing. I looked it up. The snake eating itself, and it captures that cycle really brilliantly, in my opinion. The next one we're going to talk about is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This is a beautiful book. This one is set in a underground bunker where 39 women and 1 girl are kept with no explanation. They don't know why they're there. They don't know where they are. They don't really remember their lives before or how they got there or like what's happening above the ground. The girl shows up in this, she's the only young one, and she shows up in this environment, and their day-to-day is literally monotonous, exactly the same, until something changes and something happens and they escape the bunker. It's incredibly stark and haunting and horrific, but also very philosophical. It's about survival and freedom and what it means to be a human without the, I guess, existing outside of the vacuum of history and context and connection to the larger world. This book has recently had a huge resurgence on TikTok, and I'm so happy about that because don't get me wrong, a lot of what TikTok pushes is brilliant writing, but I feel like a lot of the time we don't really get classics being talked about. So this is an older book, and I was really happy to see that this is having a bit of a resurgence. The writing here is so stripped back because the world that these women exist in is so empty and bland and blank. You're forced to zero in on the minutiae of these women and their lives and their relationships and the internal monologues of the main narrator. It's bleak and beautiful in how simplistic it is. I would probably compare it to The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which if you've been around on this channel since I started, you'll know is like one of my favorite books of all time. It's a true study of human connection and love and survival in the most dire and horrific circumstances. It's not gonna be for everyone. It's not gonna be for everyone because I think of how bleak and almost kind of like nothing in terms of the plot it is. It's similar to The Road as well, as in like it's a father and son walking along a road. It's a bunch of women trying to find any hint of civilization, but it is devastating and it will stick in your head long after you put it down. So I thought for our last book I would do something different. We're going to talk about nonfiction. Oh my god, Laura talking about nonfiction. Who is she? I've been body snatched. So this is finally a nonfiction pick. This is part memoir, part like essay, short story collection, and it's Slow Days and Fast Companies by Eve Babitz. Eve Babitz and Joan Didion are kind of widely regarded as like two of the best and most prominent authors within LA at this period of time. So she pulls you into her life within the golden age of Hollywood in the 60s and 70s. She was at the center of everything. She was like socialite it girl. She was at Hollywood parties. She was talking about music. She was talking about art, and she writes about it with such a sharp wit and wonderful rose-colored glasses like glamour, and she just has such sharp observations about the world around her. She manages to see and take in everything while also partaking in the world at the same time. If nonfiction isn't usually your vibe, I would honestly still recommend this one because it's set in such an iconic period of time, you know, the golden age of Hollywood and these actresses and Marilyn Monroe and all that sort of stuff. It almost reads like a kind of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo style fiction. I wouldn't necessarily write this one off just because it's a memoir. Eve Babitz, as I said, is often compared to Joan Didion. I saw someone on Goodreads say that Eve Babitz is Joan Didion if she was a hot slut. Honestly, can't fault that description because it's so true. I feel like Joan Didion is more kind of like serious and scholarly and contemplative and talks a lot about the minutiae of the everyday emotion and human experience, which is such a great thing. I love Joan Didion. But Babitz is more like Joan Didion's still incredibly intellectual and smart and witty hot friend, and it kind of feels like you're like sitting poolside sipping pina colada and she's telling you about her raunchy and hedonistic lifestyle, and I love every second. Her voice is so dry and sharp and witty, but it's also kind of esoteric and it's so magnetic. Like, I don't think everyone is gonna get her style of writing. I think it's kind of like British and Australian humor, and that like not everyone gets it. She's clever, she's outrageous, but at the same time she's also deeply insightful and has such a grip and such a beautiful understanding of the world and the people around her. She was nailing the single gal Carrie Bradshaw sitting in her little laptop looking out the window before Sex and the City was even a twinkle in anyone's eye. And, you know, it's very clear to see how Eve Babitz as a person has inspired so many of these like iconic female characters that we know and love today. So that is Slow Days and Fast Company by Eve Babitz. And that is my list. That is my little list of books that if you are staring down the barrel of a book read count that is just not going down, grab some of these shorties. You can knock them over in a day. You could probably, you know what, you could probably knock all of the books I talked about on this list across in a weekend if you really dedicated yourself. And it's not cheating because they are books. They are individual books. They just are very little. But I hope you're all having an excellent time. I actually cannot wrap my head around the fact that this year is nearly done. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Like, what do you mean I've been single for 5 months? That went so fast. Can I say it is simultaneously the slowest and fastest 5 months of my life. I feel like I blinked and I'm like, oh, okay. Cool. So I am approaching 2026 with a little bit of a squinty side eye. I don't trust it. I don't trust 2026. I put my faith in 2025 and look what happened.
Bombastic side eye. Criminal offensive side eye.
I am going into the New Year's being like, you know what? It's just another day. It's just another day. But I hope you're all having fantastic weeks. I hope this video was interesting. Fill me in on your lives. Tell me what's going on in your side of town in the comments. I like chatting with you all in the comments. It gives me something to do, you know? It gives me people to talk to that the only thing they want to ask me about is how I'm doing and the breakup. And so let's chat about you. Let's chat about you, babes, in the comments. And as usual, don't forget to like, subscribe. Don't leave a mean comment or I will cry. That one's important. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.